Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are just past the trade deadline here in the 2026 season. A pretty mediocre season for the A's, 51-53 record, 11.5 out in the division, and we are 5 games out of the final wild card spot. We did try to do what we could to keep this team competitive. We made several moves as we approached the trade deadline. We're renting Jesus Luzardo, although he has not been particularly effective in his first 3 games with the A's. Made a trade for Robert Stevenson, and we also recently made a trade for Kevin Ginkel to bolster our bullpen. Also added Drake Baldwin, the catcher, who we think could perhaps be our long-term catcher of the future. Picked him up in a trade where we sent away O'Neill Cruz. We also picked up Heimer Candelario to replace O'Neill Cruz as our starting third baseman against right-handed pitching. So those were the primary moves that we made. We did also add in Sean Bouchard to be our cleanup hitter and our left fielder against right-handed pitching, or against left-handed pitching. We've got a few guys also who should be back from the IL relatively soon. Steven Matz just started a rehab assignment. No guarantees that he's going to be on the major league roster. And our closer, Ian Hamilton, is now 5 days away, hopefully, from recovering from that elbow inflammation that's had him out for a while. So we should have a little bit of additional help on the way in the month of August, and look forward to September roster expansion as well. Taking a look at the schedule, we've got 2 games left against Seattle, and then we'll be on the road at San Francisco before a 4-game homestand against the Blue Jays to start off the month of August. Looking at our team statistics as we sit here on August 1st, we should be a 500 team according to Pythagorean expectations. We were a game below 500 in both April and May. We were right at 500 in both June and July. The hope is certainly with the changes that we've made to the roster that this team that's been a pretty average team, by definition an average team over the last 2 months, can maybe be a bit better and a bit above average the rest of the way. We didn't have to give up too much to bring on the players that we brought on board. I certainly don't think we're favorites to be above 500 or favorites to sneak into a wild card spot, but if the team is better over these next 2 months than it has been over the first 4 months of the season, it's not impossible. We'll need to improve the offense, which ranks 12th in the league in runs scored, and maintain or improve a little bit our pitching, which currently ranks 6th in the American League in runs allowed. And we did just make a contract offer to our recently acquired catcher, Drake Baldwin. You can see he's set to make the major league minimum next year, and then 3.2, 4.2, and $5 million are his expected arbitration numbers. Our hope is that maybe he becomes an everyday catcher for us. He looks like he could be a pretty useful bat against right-handed pitching, so although I call him an everyday catcher, I'm thinking maybe someone more to use in a platoon with a right-handed batter who would play against left-handed pitching. But I think if he's a solid producer against right-handed pitching with that defense, he could potentially be an asset to us. So we're going to try to give an offer to him to see if we can maybe buy out a couple of free agency years as well. He's never really gotten an opportunity over his first 3 years in the major leagues, with now his 4th different team over that span, to really be an everyday catcher, which is what we hope he can turn into. And if he is productive, and he has been relatively productive so far with a 110 WRC plus over 209 at-bats, if he can become a guy who's putting up that kind of production in 350 to 400 at-bats a year, primarily against right-handed pitching, I think potentially he could be worth more down the road than what those arbitration numbers suggest. So the thought with him is similar to what we did with Will Banfield a couple years ago, which hasn't really worked out at catcher, but also what we've done with Lawrence Butler and Tyler Soderstrom more recently, trying to see if we can lock up decent to good players at contracts that might end up being good value for our team. I think it's going to be one of the levers that we're going to have to press with these A's, and we're going to have to be right more often than not with those deals. And certainly right now with Will Banfield, that may be a deal that we come back to regret. He's been in AAA this whole year, not doing much offensively. He is a very talented defensive catcher. And when I look at his ratings, he is a bit better, at least in terms of his gap power against left-handed pitching. So in theory, maybe he's someone who we would be able to platoon down the line with Mr. Baldwin. I don't actually think it's going to work out with Banfield, and we may need to trade him away. But right now we're still trying to be positive and trying to be hopeful. And we split our first 2 games of the month against Seattle. Our scout actually has been in Germany, and he's come back with an interesting prospect for our international complex, the incredibly named Artis Bullwinkle. Doesn't look like a horrible starting pitching prospect. A right-hander out of Germany. Could have a potential 3 to 5 pitch arsenal, decent stamina, 16 years old, throws in the low to mid-90s. He's durable, could have really good stuff with average movement and plus control. Certainly not the worst prospect to receive by virtue of the significant investment that we've made in scouting and the fact that we've also got a pretty good international scout. And unfortunately, Steven Matz, while working on that rehab assignment, shut down for the year because of shoulder inflammation. He actually did okay with us in a relatively small sample size of 32 2/3 innings after we had him as a minor league free agent signing, but his Oakland career likely ends with this season-ending injury. And we have gotten Drake Baldwin signed to that 7-year deal. Not crazy money. The last couple years of it are going to be option seasons for us. So we gave up a lot with O'Neal Cruz plus another player to bring him on board. Our hope is that he can stabilize that catcher position for us, at least against right-handed pitchers, for many years to come. And we'll find out whether or not that works out over these next several seasons. And we've promoted Ian Hamilton back to the major league team. We're actually going to use him in a setup role. Robert Stevenson's been fine as a closer, and he's got a bit better control than Hamilton. So we're going to see how that works out going forward. You can see Mason Miller's been excellent since he came back from that injury that kept him out for a season and a half. 5-1 record with a 2.18 ERA at this point. And our A's have been playing really well. We have won 6 games in a row, so we are 7-1 in the month of August, 58-54 record. Clearly, we're not going to win the division, still in 3rd place, 8 games behind the Rangers. But the wild card is getting interesting. We are a game and a half out of the final wild card spot at this point. So we have closed the majority of that gap that we had at the start of this month of August very quickly. And we extended the winning streak to 8 games, taking the first 2 of the week against Texas. But since then, we've lost 5 in a row, including a 4-game sweep against us in Tampa. So the optimism of a week ago, I don't want to say is gone, but we're now barely above 500 again at 60 and 59. And we've slipped back to 4 games out of the final wild card spot with those 5 consecutive losses. And unfortunately, when all was said and done, after our 8 consecutive wins, we had 8 consecutive losses. We did end up winning 2 of the last 3 against Houston to split that series, but a big road trip to Los Angeles with 3 against the Angels and 3 against the Dodgers to finish up this month of August for us. 12 back in the division at this point, and we are now 7 out of the wild card. So we're feeling real good when we won 8 in a row, and not feeling so good after recently losing 8 games in a row with these Oakland A's. And we finished off the month of August with a 500 week. We swept the 3-game series against the Angels, and then we got swept in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, including a 24-0 rout. Not sure about the history of Major League Baseball, but I would have to think that a 24-0 rout is quite conceivably the worst loss in a shutout in the long history of Major League Baseball. We only got 3 hits. Was a brutal start by Clark Schmidt, 7 hits, 7 earned runs over just 2/3 of an inning. And we then used 6 relievers out of the pen, and the first 5 of them all gave up runs as well. So a just brutal performance there. Shockingly, even with the bad start, the bad finish to the month, and the 8 consecutive losses during the month, we did put up our first winning month of the season with a 14-13 record in August. We've improved to 11th in runs scored, still 6th in the league in runs allowed. We are going to need a real strong finish in the month of September to get this team into the playoffs. We're now 9 games out of that wild card spot. There's been a few times, I guess both times, since we've only in our 3rd season. Each of the first 2 years, there was a team barely above 500 in that 3rd wild card spot. And this year, the Guardians with that .565 winning percentage have been playing really well lately and put a fair amount of distance between them and the teams chasing them for that final wild card spot as we head into the final 31 games of this 2026 season for Oakland. And no real surprises with September roster expansion. Brought back 2 position players, Austin Gauthier and Brian Buelvis, who had both spent time with us earlier this year. And pitching-wise, brought back Ken Waldachuk and Nick Frasso, another 2 guys who had spent time on the Major League team this season. So not any real young prospects that we've brought up here in September roster expansion, but we're going to try to make a run at the best season we've ever had in Oakland. Low-hanging fruit, I know, is it's only 77 wins to tie and 78 to have the best season we've ever had. Certainly would love to get this team to 500, which at just 1 game below is realistically in reach. I think it's certainly going to be a stretch to get this team in the playoffs with 9 games that we need to overcome. But stranger things have happened. And we got September off to a good start with a 4-1 record, split 2 games to start off the month home against San Diego, and then we just finished a sweep of Detroit, 3 at home against Houston before we go on the road at the Angels again this week. Taking a look at the standings, we're 7 out of the wild card with About 4 weeks left to go in the season. And unfortunately, we only had a 500 week in the division, lost 2 out of 3 home against Houston, and then we did take 2 out of 3 on the road at Atlanta. Back on the road at Houston and at Colorado this week. Then we're going to have 4 at home against Boston, 3 at home against Texas. Back on the road again to Houston for 3 with the Astros to finish off the month. And then into the month of October, we've got 4 games on the road at Texas to finish things off. So not the easiest schedule. We've only got 7 home games left out of our final 20 games on the calendar this season. Taking a look at the standings, we're 9 games out of the wild card with just 20 games to go. You can see the Guardians and Twins have magic numbers of 13 and 12 respectively, so likely need to probably go at least 15 and 5, and honestly likely going to need to be even better than that. We will be following Estuary Ruiz with 34 steals. He's 3 behind Evan Carter of Texas as he attempts to lead the league in steals for a 3rd consecutive year. And he's really the only player on the team who is highly up on the leaderboards here in mid-September 2026. And we mentioned that we felt we probably had to go about 15 and 5 to have a shot at the playoffs. Well, we're going to need to go 14 and 0 the rest of the way because we just finished off a 1 and 5 week, swept in Houston, and we lost 2 out of 3 in Colorado. We've got our final homestand of the year with 4 against the Red Sox and then 3 against Texas. But as we sit here on September 21st, still 3rd in the division, and that's likely where we'll finish up. But we're now 10.5 out of the wild card, so it's getting pretty close to mathematical elimination for us. Ruiz only 1 stolen base behind Evan Carter at this point, 73 and 75. If we keep up this pace, we will have our best season ever in Oakland, but the wild card is pretty much just a total dream at this point, and the chance of getting this team over 500 is not great as we sit here with 2 weeks left in the regular season. And it actually was a solid week for our Oakland A's at home. We had a 5-2 record, split the 4 games with the Red Sox, and then swept the Rangers in the final homestand of the season. So we're slightly back over 500 at 78 and 77. That said, we had left ourselves no margin for error, and the second loss against Boston, coupled with the events of Thursday the 24th, resulted in us being eliminated from the playoffs. So we've got 3 left at Houston, and then, of course, the 4 left against Texas that I had talked about. So 7 games left on the road. And at this point, the big question is whether we can hold on to a winning season. We've gotten to 78 wins, so this is now the most successful of our 3 seasons in Oakland. Not that that's saying a heck of a lot, but would certainly not mind if we're able to take a step forward this year and finish at least with that winning record that we've been pursuing. And we just lost our first game of the final road trip to fall back to 500 at 78 and 78. Sean Bouchard, who we picked up in that trade with Colorado in July to hopefully boost our offense against left-handed pitching, out with torn ankle ligaments. So his run in Oakland is likely complete, as we're unlikely to spend about $3.5 million on him next year. Ended up being a disappointment for a guy who we thought was going to be a specialist against left-handed pitching for us. 234 average, just 1 homer and 10 ribbies and 111 at-bats. 87 WRC plus for us, and he was basically a replacement level ball player, unfortunately. So he did not do the job that we had hoped. At the end of the episode, we'll check in on the rest of our rentals and see how those players did. And unfortunately, we ended up losing our final 2 series of the years. We dropped 2 out of 3 at Houston, and then we dropped 3 out of 4 against Texas. So what that meant is we did not even achieve a 500 season, finished off at 80 and 82. So again, the best season we've had here in Oakland, but still certainly not a great year. Ruiz did end up leading the league in steals for a 3rd consecutive year with 46. We ended up 3rd place in the division, 19 behind the Mariners, and we ended up 12 games out of the wild card. So felt like it was a little bit of fool's gold in early August when we tore off that 8-game winning streak and we're only a game and a half out of the wild card. I guess 80 and 82 is technically progress. Ownership only wanted us to not suck completely, so we certainly have achieved that goal. I mentioned I'd take a quick look at a few of the players that we brought in to help us. Jesus Luzardo ended up going 5-6 with a 4.44 ERA. Certainly with his profile and the way he's performed over the course of his career, we're hoping for a bit more than that. Robert Stevenson was solid for us, 17 saves in 27 games, 3.18 ERA, 39 strikeouts in just 28 and a third innings pitched, put up a WAR over 1 in his limited action with us. And then Kevin Ginkel, 0-2 with a save, 3.86 ERA, 3.38 Sierra, 1.14 ERA plus, 67 FIP minus. So he did a fine job for us as well. Drake Baldwin, the new catcher, who we hope may finally be our answer at catcher, did pretty good offensively, playing primarily against right-handed pitching, hit 288, 12 doubles, 2 homers, and 23 ribbies in 139 at-bats. Put up a 129 WRC plus and a 1.6 WAR. Certainly am optimistic that maybe he will be the catcher that we've been looking for quite some time at this point. Candelario came on as a 3rd baseman for us, and he was pretty disappointing, especially considering that we were playing him primarily against right-handed pitching, where we thought he'd be pretty effective. Batted just 200, 4 homers, and 17 ribbies in 145 at-bats. Just a 71 WRC plus as a rental for us. Clearly, we will not be exercising his $18 million team option for next season. We'll do a deep dive on everyone next time around, but just wanted to kind of focus on the players who we had brought in before the trade deadline. Taking a look at the team statistics, the 80 and 82 record, we did end up a game better than Pythagorean expectations. Had winning records in both August and September, which was kind of our goal coming out of the trade deadline. Now we were just 1 game over 500 in each of those months, so we can say we had winning records in both months by the slimmest margin possible. And of course, the 2 games over 500 that we were in August, September, we gave back completely with that 1-3 record in October to finish things off. Ended up 10th in the National League in runs scored, 8th in runs allowed. Our starting pitching weakened a bit down the stretch. So if you're going to finish 10th in runs scored, 8th in runs allowed, you're probably going to be pretty close to a 500 team. And at 80 and 82, that's what we were here in 2026. And with that, we will call it a season. We'll be back in our next episode to review our roster, start planning for the off season, take a look at how some of our minor leaguers have performed, and look at some of the top prospects in baseball that we thought about pursuing in recent drafts and IAFA periods that we ended up going in a different direction on. So should be some interesting things to talk about in the next episode as we get ready for a very important off season for these Oakland Athletics. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.